now, look, if we look straight down there where the van is parked, and just to the right of it, there's a small dark structure. Can you see that?
Yeah.
That's the little tunnel where this little railway went underneath. A later railway, there's a mainline railway was built later over the top of it, so that's what that little tunnel is. And the path you walked along is the remains of the track bed, and in the pictures, in the early days, you can see it comes straight across here, and it turns, and there's a kind of a siding just in front of the mirror here. Because they use enormous amounts of concrete, so they must have brought the materials, a lot of it with them, but because they probably use the shingle as well, and the water supply, what people asked about. In one of the pictures, there what appears to be a pump and a pipe, so perhaps they've made a borehole and pump water, because there's a lot of water around it. Anyway, now this one, obviously it's too big for anyone to sit here with stethoscopes in his ears and listen to it, so this one they adopted microphones. This mirror's got the property, according to Dr. Tucker, the expert who designed it and made it, it deflects the sounds about 75 feet to a focal area about 75 feet in front of the face of the main mirror, which brings it down to somewhere along behind that wall. Imagine when it was complete, that wall went all the way along. It's a curved wall, concentric with the mirror. Behind the wall, they placed lots of very sensitive microphones, which were very directional, so they picked up in a particular direction when they were aiming at. And you could be tuned as well to get certain aircraft engine frequencies. They were all connected electrically by cables to a control room, which is behind this window. There was a window in there at one time. When we go around the back, you'll see the remains of the control room was collapsed on the ground. There's only one other mirror like this I know of, and that's in Malta. There were plans, of course, not only to equip the whole of the English coastline with defence mirrors, but also parts of the empire. And they made a start by going to Malta. The same men went out to Malta, and they built a copy of this one in Malta. Then, of course, radar came along, and it all collapsed, everything finished. So it stood there. It's still there, unvandalised. They don't have any vandals in Malta, I think. It must be better behaved or something, but it's in beautiful condition, and there it is. So the idea was going to be a chain of mirrors, a big one like this, supplemented by those 30-foot ones. The little 20-foot ones were obsolete, they were just experimental, they were finished with those. So they could pick up bearings then from particular microphones that were responding to instruments that were connected to in the control room behind here. In the early days, the control room, as I think I said, was in a wooden hut over there. This mirror was put up in 1930, but this hole and the control box were put up in 1933, where somebody had the idea, a good idea, it was better to have a chap in charge who could see what was going on out here and look out on them and enjoy the scenery and so on. So there it was. But this mirror, according to Dr. Tucker, the best range he achieved with this mirror was 27 miles. Now, that doesn't sound much either, does it? The people who operated the one in Malta claimed they could pick up aircraft at about 35 miles over the sea, because their mirror, of course, was facing out over the sea towards Italy, which, of course, they regarded then as a potential enemy, because Mussolini was in charge of Italy, and it was only about 60 miles across where the mirror was across the strait, at the bottom end of the island, Sicily. So that's why it was put there. The same people did it. Dr. Tucker went out there, surveyed the sites. There were going to be 5 mirrors on Malta. There were going to be some on other parts of the empire, but the whole thing fell to pieces in 1935 when a much better system with radar came along. So that's all we need to tell you. So get the idea that here in embryo, unfortunately, we've got the 3 mirrors of the main types throughout the history of these. The very early ones, which date back to the First World War, which there are a few still standing, were sort of smaller versions of the little one here. There's one at Kilton, for instance, on the Humber Estuary. It's about 15 feet diameter. It sort of stands on the ground, rather like that one. And then they went to the 30 foots, and then they went to this. So they were going to have a lot of these if the plan had succeeded. And there are in existence plans, drawings, and maps showing where they were going to put them all. There was going to be one at Reculver, for instance, one of these. And all around the Thames estuary, there was a whole scheme developed. A lot of money was about to be spent on that, and Watson Watt, who was doing his radar experiments, was very worried that they were, in his view, going to waste thousands of pounds building these useless mirrors. And he said to one of his assistants that what they'd got to do was to prove they could beat the mirrors hollow in particularly in the range, which they did very early on. Even the early radar experiments, there was 2 picking up aircraft sort of 50 miles away. Soon it was 100 miles. These mirrors couldn't get anywhere near it. So of course they all collapsed, the whole thing became obsolete. So you'd say it's a glorious failure. People often ask, and I've asked them, you know, why did they go on doing these experiments with a system that was bound to be no good in the end? Because acoustics is such a dodgy way of trying to do it, isn't it? The atmosphere alters sound waves. There are so many problems with noises. Because as the traffic grew and it got noisier and noisier in the environment, it's more and more difficult to pick up the aircraft sounds. We've got one here doing nicely. It's one of ours. Just to tell you about one of ours that did fly over here. Some of you may have seen the very, very first Coast programme. Series 1, Programme 1 was done here. And on that day, some scientists from the National Physical Laboratory and the Lade University came with microphones and then said to me, we're going to try and replicate the working of this mirror. I said, you'll never do it because, first of all, the front wall has collapsed. Secondly, you don't have the special sort of microphones that were developed. Dr. Tucker developed a special microphone called the hot wire microphone, which was very sensitive and reacted to pressure waves, so you could pick up these sounds very delicately. Anyway, these chaps came, they put one microphone here, and that's to fall into a hole. They put one microphone on the thing here, and they put another one out on the bare shingle, and then they had instruments here, and then they got a Tiger Moth built in 1933, which is just the right period. It flew in from over the sea, and they were all dancing up and down, getting very excited, because this microphone picked it up before we could hear or see it. So there was a slight effect. Better, and it worked better, of course, than the one out on the open shingle. They would have compared the two instruments they were measuring them with. So it sort of worked, but not. It was a bit spurious, really. But it made a programme, and the moth kit was beautiful, a lot more than the people I can see on the television. They spent a whole day filming it, and this moth flew around, and it was really quite marvellous to watch. And it was a bitterly cold, grey November day. But at tea time, just as we were finishing, there was a wonderful sunset. And I remember saying to one of the cameramen, you must put that in. He said, I've only got a few feet left in whatever they filmed where it is. So he did the sunset. And there's actually a couple of shots, I think, of the sunset on the television pictures. Yeah. So it's very interesting to see that they tried it out. That's probably the first time a microphone has been tried here since this mirror went obsolete in about 1937. Dr. Tucker kept coming and doing experiments here, even after radar. He was here in 1936 for a fact, because he got letters and reports in that period. Now, if you go around the back, you'll see repairs that have been made by English Heritage. They came in 2003. Yeah, 2003. English Heritage had scheduled this as an ancient monument many years ago. Local people were getting very, very worried about the way it was going, getting vandalised. The water was encroaching. That end of the mirror was completely out over the water. It's now been had shingle packed underneath. It's standing in mid-air, the foundations in mid-air, and the water coming in. And people were worried it would collapse. And so after many years, English Heritage got some funds and so on, and did repairs. That's why we've got it on an island now. They put that bridge in to try and keep vandals out and so on, with limited success, I know. Anyway, so they did these repairs. One of the things they repaired was a big hole, which you'll see when we go around the back. This is the last story, I promise. There's a hole in that one, and for years, Owen and I have been bringing parties of people here and saying, look at these blooming vandals, you know, look what they do. Because there was drawings all over this, and people took up. There was a big hole through that far buttress on the back. We found out later that that hole was not caused by vandals. It was actually a hole made in 1940. In 1940, a man called Hassel Hanbury Brown, who was an army officer, who wrote a letter to English Heritage about this in his retirement. He'd heard about the mirrors. He said in 1940 he was stationed at Shorncliffe Barracks along the coast here. He got orders to come here with a team of sappers and some explosives and demolish this mirror. So he got here, he put a charge on the buttress, blew it, and it was so strong, the whole thing, it just made a hole in it. He realised they're going to have to get a lot more powerful explosives and also some other equipment. So he set off back to the railway. They used the little branch line. When he got back to the station at New Romney, they were waiting for him there with a message from the barracks. Bring your men back, don't blow up the mirror, forget it. And he put in the end of his letter, the wonderful ways of the military. No one ever explained why it was stopped. So fortunately for us, it was stopped. Maybe someone in high authority said, don't blow it up. We don't know. So here it is. So the hole has been patched. So it's the one thing that wasn't vandalised. Right, you want to go around the back? Yeah, mind these.